Hello to everyone out in YouTube land, all friends on the internet. I haven't made a video in a really long time and I always feel super awkward when I start the videos. So I'm just gonna jump right in. So my book, Grief Done Differently, is about ready to turn 2 years old. So I think it was November 7th of 2021, is 2023 now when it came out. And I have been traveling around doing my 45-minute presentation to women's groups and churches and whoever wants me to come. And recently I've had the thought that it's time to retire that. I don't know why for sure, but I feel like the message has gotten out there. It has done what I wanted it to do, and I think it's time to move on to my next chapter. But the thing is, I do love the content in my talk. And so I thought, you know what? I am going to record myself in the privacy of my own home, giving my talk to my phone, so that it's saved for whoever would like to see it in the future. So that's all this is. I got my little notes. These puppies have been around the block. Like I have probably talked to, I should have kept track, maybe, 15 to 20 groups of women, and I take my trusty little notes along with me. I feel like I'm, what was his name? Linus, the one with the blanket on Charlie Brown, right? It's kind of my security blanket. So I'll be referring to my notes. And the apple polisher in me, the side of me that wants everything to be just perfect, is going to want to stop and try this again and edit to make this perfect, right? But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk just like you are hanging out in my kitchen with me. So when I flub my words, which I will, just smile and nod and continue watching. So I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going and we'll see how this turns out. So I'm talking about my book, Grief Done Differently. I always say that I want people who come to my presentations and who read the book to know that I think this applies to you, whether you have lost someone or not, because this book is not about death, but about life and how to live it to its fullest, no matter what you've been through in the past. And I want to let you know that I am not here because I'm some sort of, expert that's got it all figured out, even though I think I refer to myself as an expert many times in the talk, but I'm not here because I got it all figured out. I feel like I'm just a mom who has been through the worst and by the grace of God survived to find healing and to now tell the story. And if I'm being totally honest, I have struggled with imposter syndrome while writing this book. I thought, who am I to be telling anyone anything about how to grieve? I thought I needed some kind of fancy degrees or counseling certificates or something to make me a qualified expert before I could write a single word. But then I think it was actually on a calendar from my mother-in-law. It was like a bunch of inspirational quotes and things. And there was one by Maya Angelou that said, "A bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song." So at the risk of sounding corny, which I kind of am, or ultra spiritual, I feel like God has healed me and put a song in my heart. So then I feel it's like my job to share what I've learned with you. So without further ado, if you live in Saline, Seward, Lancaster counties, you've probably seen this book. It's kind of been around and I've had lots of people helping me, promote it and share it and things. But let's make it official, right? So here it is, Grief Done Differently, a faith-based guide to surviving the worst and becoming your best. Now this book is over 7 years in the making and really the answer to the impossible question always asked of me. How did you make it through losing your son? I like to say that Grief Done Differently is not your grandma's guide to grief. I don't think it is. I feel like it's unfiltered, it's feisty in spots, yet it's faith-based. And I hope that it reads like a letter from a trusted friend. I have people who know me well that have read the book and they say, when I read it, I hear your voice in my head. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but anyway, it's written in my voice for sure. So I would love to jump straight to the good part because I'm excited to tell you that a wonderful life is possible no matter what you've been through in the past. But for the people that don't know me and don't know my story, I better take you back just a little bit. So the very abbreviated version is on March 13th, 2014, our son Trevin was a passenger in an SUV driven by a teenage friend. And they drove a single mile on a gravel road to look at some cows for a 4-H project. And they made it there just fine, but they didn't make it back. And if you read the book, you'll get the full story. But for now, for the sake of time, we'll just leave it at that. You know, looking back, I am certain that God knew that Trevin would only grace this planet for 14 short years because he blessed that child's life to the max. I learned early on to never bet that boy, not that we should probably bet our children anyway, but I learned early on to never bet Trev because I would lose every single time and I'm the mom. Trevin was so comfortable in his own skin, he was so sweet and he was so funny, and somehow that kid, he had wisdom beyond his years. And sometimes even, 9.5 years later, when I look back, it's still hard to believe that something so devastating and life-altering and unfixable could happen to me and my family and my Trevin, but it did. Someone's split-second decision on a gravel road, it turned my world completely upside down and it made me question everything. Back then in 2014, I still worked in radiology at the Creed Area Medical Center, so I had seen trauma firsthand. Suddenly, I felt like I was the patient with traumatic injuries. Like nobody knew how I would respond to treatment or if I would ever fully recover. And I was scared, honestly, that I would never be okay again. And I grieved not only the loss of my son, but my former life and the person that I used to be. So the day after Trevin's funeral, I received a gift from my good friend and radiology coworker, Connie. And I have it right here, actually. It is a cute little journal. So Connie, being the quality human being that she is, she had it personalized with our Christmas cards that we had sent her throughout the years, and she saved. Like, she had these things. It's amazing. So I get the gift, and I'm like, oh, that is so sweet, but am I ever going to use it? Like, who can write at a time like this? So I made a little note on page 1, and I set it aside. Well, as the days went by, I found myself reaching for that little journal more and more. When I felt up to my eyeballs in grief and certain that I couldn't go on, I wrote. I can't explain it, but there is something special about getting that mental mess out and onto paper. It felt cathartic and healing. And I felt like I could just wipe my tears and take a breath and just keep going. So consequently, I have hundreds, if not thousands of pages of the good and the bad and the oh so ugly of grief. So when people started asking me, Steph, how are you doing this? Well, I basically had a printed instruction manual to look back on and to figure it out. So a printed instruction manual is exactly what I needed in the days following Trevin's accident. I read about this in the book, but I distinctly remember asking a group of women who had gathered in my kitchen about a how-to book on grief. I know they meant well, but their response ticked me off. I just remember their sad, sympathetic faces, and they just kind of chuckled and shook their head and said, "Oh, honey, there's no book like that." Suddenly, I felt very self-conscious and stupid. I value honesty, but on that day, I would have settled for a lie. Like, maybe they didn't believe that I could survive such a tragedy with any amount of dignity and grace, but couldn't they just pretend? I wanted them to become very convincing actors who give these Oscar-worthy performances and say, "Hey, Steph, remember, you are God's girl, you are strong, and you've got this." But that was a gift that they couldn't give me. And no shame, no hard feelings, it's just the truth. But I'm a take charge kind of girl. So I went online, I let my fingers do the walking, and I searched the internet for this magical how-to book on grief. But what I found were ugly, depressing little critters. The kind of book that made me just want to cry and hide out in bed for like the rest of my life. So I never bought a book, but I got several as gifts. And I have one here with me today. It's called Remembering with Love. If you gave this to me, I'm really sorry. I'm sure your heart is in the right spot, but it didn't do anything for me. Okay, that was an aside. So Remembering with Love, messages of hope for the first year of grieving and beyond. And I remember being pumped to crack this little baby open and to be infused with this hope that the subtitle was promising me. So I found a poem for your listening enjoyment. Don't worry, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just to give you a little taste. Okay, here it is. It's called Christmas, a poem to my son. I thought, how perfect. Christmas has come and gone, and still you are not here. With every package that I wrapped, I shed a silent tear. We made our Christmas visits. I smiled and tried to hide all of the pain and sorrow that I have deep inside. No one seems to understand. I live from day to day. And if I live 100 years, the pain won't go away. So many years later, when I read that part, I get like a pit in my stomach. I can remember how I felt. 100 years, 100 years. I was thinking, are you telling me that Trevin's death is now my life sentence? I remember I was sitting right over here in our living room, and my eyes were welling with tears, and a gigantic lump formed in my throat as I looked across the living room to my then 12-year-old son, Tyler. That kid had just lost his brother. And at this rate, he's going to lose his mom too. He was looking to me for cues on how to do this grieving thing right. So there was no way on God's green earth that I'm going to meditate on this mess and just lay down and wait for things to improve. Like, I was new to grief, but I assumed things didn't work that way. And then you know what happens? The valley of the shadow of death becomes my permanent home, and I become a mother whom Tyler no longer recognizes. No, hard pass on that. What I needed was someone to rewrite the end of that dang poem. I mean, I know we have to cry the tears and feel the pain and grieve the loss, but you guys, I say in the darkest night, we still have got to look towards the morning. So I knew that I couldn't rewrite the end of this poem. It's not mine, it was somebody else's. But the writer in me thought that maybe I have the power because I hold the pen. I knew I could write my own story with a much happier ending. So looking back at my sweet little journal, so many years later, I love this thing. I did graduate pretty quickly from my journal to the modern conveniences of my Mac because my hand started becoming like an arthritic claw trying to grasp the pen for hours, right? So, but looking back at my journal, I can see myself setting up these impossible situations for God, and God just systematically knocking them down one by one. It was a pattern of questions and struggle, followed by answers and growth. And God seemed to be using my circumstances to not only heal me, but to change me into the person that He designed me to be. You know, when I wrote the book and I entitled it Grief Done Differently, I was like, oh girl, you are limiting your audience because, I mean, really, who has gone through grief? Who has lost something in their life? Well, spoiler alert, like so many people. Whether it's the loss of a person like me, to a home, a job, a marriage, or heck, just your youth and the person you used to be. Like everybody is going through something. So if you are encountering grief today, if you're experiencing loss of any kind, just know that I feel like we're kindred spirits, and I wrote this book for you. You know, I want you to entertain the fact, though, that I believe that nothing can happen in life without passing through God's supernatural filter. God is never sleeping in heaven, right? He's never sloppy or careless or distracted. So if you're going through something today, just know that since He allowed it, He is with you every step of the way. So some of us have been around the block where grief is concerned. Our loss happened long ago and it's just a tiny little blip in our rearview mirror. Others are grief newbies and they're still trying to find their footing. Grief is a constant, nagging, daily reality for them. And no matter what stage we're in, we all have our challenges. So I found a quote. I wish I would have written it because I really like it, but it's too new that it didn't even make it into the book. And here it is. No matter how long you've been on the road, you're only 2 feet from the ditch. But no matter how long you've been in the ditch, you're only 2 feet from the road. So I love that. Do you get the analogy? So if you are an OG grief expert, like I claim to be, whatever, right? You may be tempted to underestimate the latent effects of grief. You think, you know what? It's been years, I'm fine. But watch out, because washboards and potholes in seemingly benign circumstances can send you careening into the ditch in no time flat. So after almost 10 years of grief, I spent some time in the ditch, as you might imagine. So this one time in particular, it was a couple years ago, and Trevin's birthday, which is June 1st, and Memorial Day, that year it was May 31st, so just a day apart. And my husband Brent and I spent the weekend at our cabin at Johnson Lake. And like I said, back then, after about 7 years of grieving, I thought, it's okay, I got it figured out. But admittedly, I had gotten sloppy in my coping skills. I wasn't journaling daily. Trevin and grief were not at the top of my prayer list. And I definitely didn't have the daily chats with my ride or die supporters. Like on most days, I didn't need to, and I felt fine. So Brent and I were taking a boat ride at sunset. This is our favorite activity and our favorite time of day. And you guys, this night did not disappoint. So I don't know if you've been to Johnson Lake, but it was glass that night, not a breath of wind. The sun was setting and there was just the right amount of clouds sprinkled throughout the sky that the sun was reflecting the, purples and pinks and oranges. It was just an absolutely gorgeous night. I was thoroughly enjoying myself until a song came on the radio. I'm sure it was for Memorial Day, but it was Tim McGraw's If You're Reading This. The song is just so sad to me. And suddenly, I was transported back to 2014 all over again, and the suffocating grip of grief, it had me. And tears started streaming down my face. They just came out of nowhere, and I was so annoyed at that stupid, sad song that I got up and I shut off the radio. Sat back down like, whew, glad that's over. But my eyes didn't get the memo, like they just kept leaking. Eventually, Brent docked the boat, and I went into the cabin. And in the privacy of those 4 walls of my bathroom, I let her rip. Hot tears sprang from my tear ducts as I ugly cried and remembered the incredible human that we had lost. Trevin is gone and he's not coming back. And I thought, what a waste of a perfect life. Several snotty Kleenexes later, I looked up and I made eye contact with myself in the mirror. And I'm just like, look at you, grief expert. This is really grief done differently. I was just broken in that moment, and I was definitely in the ditch. But remember the second part of that quote. No matter how long you've been in the ditch, it's okay because you're only 2 feet from the road. That means that I can reach into my toolbox. I can reread the lessons in my how-to book and remember what works. I can get back on the road in no time flat. And that's exactly what I did. What really breaks my heart, and probably is the reason that I went through the work of writing the book, is some people don't know how to get back on the road, or that it's even a possibility that exists for them in the universe. They seem content to set up their life in the ditch, and they think their life ended the day their loved ones did. You've probably heard the old saying, there's no wrong way to grieve. I don't think that's true. I mean, I know we all grieve differently, but I think we're all responsible for taking baby steps in the right direction every day towards healing. So I'm going to ask you a question. Today, the person watching this video, sitting in your seat, are you on the road or do you find yourself in the ditch? And it's a new concept, so maybe you don't know. So living on the road looks something like, for me, trusting God, having that circle of support, taking care of myself physically through nutrition and exercise and good sleep, taking care of myself mentally through the journaling, prayer, gratitude, walks in nature. Walked those puppies this morning at sunrise. It was awesome. But and knowing that my best days are still ahead of me. That to me is living on the road. Ditch dwelling, well, it looks a little bit darker. Asking why over and over and over, knowing that you will not get an answer this side of heaven. Blaming God, blaming yourself, and blaming others. Isolation, anger, or dulling the pain with alcohol, with drugs, or even with food. And assuming that your best days are long gone. Now, if you find yourself in the ditch today, no worries, I have great news for you. You have complete control over your current state and location, and that's where grief done differently comes in. Let's get in the shot one more time, right? So this book is heavy on faith. I feel like if I would have skipped the faith, the rest of it would have just been a Band-Aid for grief. It's kind of like if I would wake up every morning and whack my hand with a hammer, but then take a Tylenol. Sure, the Tylenol will help, but I will always have the pain until I learn to deal with the source and put the hammer down. God knows how to gently take the hammer. What I'm not saying is, though, sit back and wait for God to fix my life. Okay, God, whenever you're ready to fix things, I'm here for it. That is not what I'm saying. So this book also challenges readers to find the warrior within, because I think it's imperative to do the hard work of healing, especially when you don't feel like it. And lastly, I get to put my coaching hat on. I am a health coach. I've been a health coach for about 5.5 years. I don't know if you know that about me, but I love to put my coaching hat on, giving readers practical steps to move them physically and mentally and relationally towards healing. So there's lots of good stuff in this book, if I do say so myself. So I've picked out a few things to share with you today. All right. The first thing is bricks in your backpack. That's what it's called. So do you ever feel weighed down by your life? Life can be heavy. Life can be tough, right? Well, the Boy Scouts teach that you can't get very far while carrying a heavy backpack. And this, of course, refers to the metaphorical backpack that we all carry around through life. Life is tough. At this point, you may have noticed. We mess up. We fail. We get dumped. We get demoted. We look stupid. We waste money. We lose a loved one, and 1,000 other things. Well, depending on how you deal with these negative events, a heavy brick can be added to your backpack. And this happens slowly over time, so we don't even notice the weight. That is until we wake up one day and realize that the load is too much to bear. You guys, it's time to set the bricks down. And you can, So you get to choose the thoughts that take up residence in your mind and the bricks that you allow to stay in your backpack. So it's as simple and as difficult as making the decision to let go. We got to realize that the past is the past and there is no changing it. And the bricks that we're carrying around, they're killing us. So we've got to learn to unzip that bag. We've got to take out those bricks and throw them down. And unfortunately, this is probably not going to be a one-time occurrence, because the habits and the mindsets that we've had for so long, like those bricks are bound to show back up. And that's okay. I think we just need to gently remind ourselves, no, this is a new day filled with new thoughts and new ways of being. And the bricks, they no longer serve us. The next thing I want to talk to you about is something I call making the decision to heal. So making the decision to heal was the most important decision that I made, coming right after my faith in God. So having faith in God, number one, making a decision to heal is number two. So making the decision in grief and in life is something that you must do for yourself. No one else can do it for you. And unfortunately, there is no pill, no potion, no book, no exercise, no mantra, no nothing that takes the place of making the decision with a capital D. It is the kind of decision that says, you know what? I don't care what comes up. I don't care what happens. I don't care how difficult it is. I am in this for the long haul. So when you go into grief or any situation with that kind of determination, I'm telling you, you are nearly unstoppable. So back in 2014, it was obvious that life as I knew it was over. And so trying to get back to normal was stupid. It was not going to happen. And it reminds me of the Twin Towers on 9/11. So the skyline of New York City had changed forever. And the thing is, no one tried to reshape and reform all of that twisted metal and the jagged shards of glass and the dusty debris. They knew that they had to clean it up, clear it out, and reimagine what those once majestic buildings would look like now post 9/11. And I had to do the same. Our family of 4 had become a family of 3 in a split second. And now Tyler was unfortunately an only child. And I knew that life could never be the same, but something deep in my heart knew that it could still be good. And that brings me to what I call my apple pie philosophy. So it's an epiphany that came to me just weeks after losing Trevin, and right when I needed it the most. So in May of 2014, just a couple months after losing Trevin, the grief had really gotten to me, both mentally and physically. I was struggling with daily headaches. I had this TMJ pain that kind of went down my neck and into my shoulder. I was just a mess. And so I'm like, well, I'll try a massage, I guess. So I was lying face down on the massage table, waiting for the therapist to come in. And I noticed the music that was playing. And of course, the music was supposed to be soothing. But to my messed up little mind, I just saw it as sad. And I started thinking about, that incredible human that we had lost. And what everyone seemed to be saying. Life will never be the same. Never, never, never be the same. And I thought, oh God, they're right. No matter what I do or how hard I try, even if I pray my very best prayers, Trevin isn't coming back. I'm not the strong. I can't do this. I was so close to losing it face down on that massage table when an image popped into my mind. I have a very active mind. There's a lot going on in this little noggin, but this was such a random image that I don't even think my brain could think it up. So I have to give credit to God for this one. So it was a picture of an apple pie. And not just any apple pie, mind you. This was Trevin's apple pie that he made in his 8th grade everyday living class. And I remember Trevin being so proud of this pie. And he said he cheated just a little bit because he went on YouTube and looked up how to do that lattice top crust, And he said, oh, my classmates' crusts were a disaster. And he was just so proud of his. So Trevin brought the pie home and we baked it. We were right here, actually. We baked it, we cut it, and little brother Tyler got the first piece. Now, if you have children, or heck, even if you just have brothers and sisters, you know that kids of that age don't make a habit of complimenting each other, right? But on this night, things were different. Tyler was absolutely gushing over this pie. I remember him saying, "Oh, it's so good. And it's so perfect. It's just too bad we had to cut it." And Tyler was right. That whole, beautiful, once perfect pie will never be the same because a piece of it is gone. And that's just like our family. We will never be the same because part of us is gone. But does that mean after a pie is cut and the first piece is taken, the rest of it is ruined? We throw it away? Of course not. It's still wonderful and good, just in a different way. So at that moment on the massage table, I realized something. I realized that we must enjoy the rest of our pie and give thanks for the pieces that remain instead of just focusing on the one that is gone. The pie isn't ruined, it's just different, and that's just like us. You know, it's been about 9.5 years since that day on the massage table. And me standing here talking about giving thanks for the portion of the pie that remains, like, what? It's like I'm trying to make it sound all precious, like a flippin' Hallmark Christmas movie or something. And grief isn't precious. It's hard, and it takes guts, and it takes determination. And you guys, sometimes I cried in the shower until I ran myself out of hot water. But you know what I did after that? I found the warrior within and I just kept going. Because if you remember, I had already done something. I had already made the decision. I made the decision to do the hard work of healing no matter what. And you might be asking yourself, okay, chick, how? Why? You're early on in the grieving process. How were you able to find the fire in the pit of your belly, find the warrior within to keep going no matter what? How? Well, let me tell you, I had a really great why. So sometimes people call it a motivating factor. And I had a really good one. So it was something so important to me that it kind of pulled me by my heartstrings. It pulled me forward. It pushed me when I wanted to quit. My motivating factor came in the form of a 106-pound sixth grader named Tyler. This sweet, shy second-born, he is the kind of kid that makes parenting fun. So I don't know why, but from day one, Tyler has always been my boy. So quick to stick up for his old mom for any of my parenting blunders or oversights. I don't know if I want to share this little story off the cuff, but I think I will. So the boys, when they were younger, probably like 8 and 10 years old, they had this thing, it was a red Solo cup phase, okay? So they would take a whole like 50 pack or maybe 100 pack. I don't know why I was so generous with red Solo cups, but they would just go and they would make things, right? So they would build towers and try to balance Matt, our 20-pound cat, on the top. And they had a camera ready in slow-mo, ready to catch Matt falling, right? Slow-mo falling. Matt was ticked, but oh my goodness, the video was worth it. So one day they were right over here in the living room. They made a big pyramid with Solo cups right by the windows there. And you know, they were little guys then, and they couldn't get the very last cup on the top. And so they asked their 5'7" mother, "Hey mom, can you come over and place the last cup?" It's a very important job, right? So I go over there and I try to reach, and I can't quite reach it. Well, let's see. Folding chair. Here, let me grab this. And so I have the folding chair. I get up on top. You know where this is going, right? And as I'm reaching, Trevin says, "Mom, don't you dare knock that thing down." And I say, "Bud, I've got it." So I'm reaching, and then the folding chair did what folding chairs do, and it folded up on me, and I went flying into the Solo cups. They went crashing, bouncing all over the place, and I'm on the floor. Trevin is laughing his butt off on the living room floor. But what does my boy Tyler do? "Mom, are you okay?" Like, bless his heart. He is 22 now and equally as precious. I hope he still loves his old mom. So anyway, Tyler was the reason I could do a number of things. So I could guard my mind against unhealthy memories and negativity. I could speak words of encouragement over our home and our family. I could make supper and clean up the house when that couch over there, it was calling my name. I could do math homework at the kitchen table every dang night with Tyler Allen Roth, even after a 12-hour shift. And I could keep going when I wanted to quit. So let's talk about you again. Do you have a motivating factor? Do you have a why? Do you have something really, really important to you that keeps you going when you just want to quit? I told you mine, so we should probably pause a moment and think of yours. So I want you to picture the most important people in your life. Like, get a good picture of them in your mind. And I wonder, would they benefit if you became the best, most loving, most healed version of yourself? I bet they would. And what's your dream for your life? Just like Trevin's apple pie, our lives may never be quote unquote the same, but they can still be amazing. So maybe today is the day where you think, okay, what's that thing in my life that I need to clean up, clear out, and start to reimagine and rebuild? So the technique that I want to share with you next is something I actually thought I dreamed this up. I'm convinced there are no original ideas left in the universe. Okay, so it's something that I had been doing for years, way before I learned it in health coaching school. And it's a technique called the brain dump. And the brain dump is made for those extra special days when you feel up to your eyeballs in the sludge of life. And that was me back in August of 2017. So as luck would have it, I went back to school for health coaching on the exact same day that we totally gutted our kitchen and living room for a complete remodel. So this house, I believe it was built in 1913. So we redid it and we ripped her down to the studs, okay? So we were cooking and eating and basically living in a little camper parked out in our backyard. Tyler turned 16 during this time, which was relatively pathetic. I was still working in radiology and getting my butt royally kicked on call. I remember that. So I was dealing with lack of sleep, crazy home environment, stress over the remodel, and still missing Trevin like crazy. So one morning, I remember it was a Tuesday, I had the day off, and I woke up just missing Trevin more than usual. I just felt a darkness wash over me. I think the messiness of my life was making grief kind of rear its ugly head. And I just felt like I had so much going on in my brain that I just felt overwhelmed. And honestly, I was tempted to wallow and eat my weight in cake. We had leftover birthday cake. But instead, I did a brain dump. And this might sound like a nerdy thing that a health coach tries to make you do, but I'm telling you, it works like a charm. So I'm gonna explain it to you. All right, so you take a blank sheet of paper and you draw a line down the middle. And on the left-hand side, you write concerned about. And on the right-hand side, you write thankful for. Okay, so let's start with the bad. It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? But the thing is, we make the mistake of keeping our negative thoughts and emotions bottled up or like shoved way, way down. We think, okay, just don't think about it. Just smile through the pain and it'll all go away. Actually, things get worse. So is there anything that keeps you up at night? Is there a worry or a regret that haunts you during the day? Well, if so, now is the time to name it, claim it, and write that sucker down. I feel like in the dark recesses of your mind, it has control over you, but no more, because we're going to bring it out and into the light. So whatever comes to mind is perfect. It's like an old school brainstorming session. It doesn't have to be well written. Nobody's going to read this or judge this. And like I tell people, this doesn't have to be huge things like I lost my son. It could be those little ankle biters. It could be like, I got that stack of bills. I don't feel like paying them. It's a Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I don't want to get my mammogram. Whatever the case may be. So just fill the page. So after you've deposited the negatives on the left side of the paper, you may notice a little shift. less overwhelmed maybe. I don't know how it works, but it does help. You now have a very comprehensive list of the crappy part of your life. But hey, like, don't forget about the good. So next, I want you to jump over to the right. I want you to write everything that is good and sweet and right in your life. So the big things like your home, your health, your family, your job, whatever the case may be, or little things like, okay, when I was on my walk this morning, the sunrise was spectacular. My coffee was the bomb. Matt, my cat, that little hairball, I love him. Sometimes a good hair day happens. Like, give thanks for everything, big and small. And I'm telling you that it helps. Usually I feel so much better after doing that, and it takes maybe 5-10 minutes. But there have been days where it just doesn't do the trick. The time I was talking to you about from 17, we're living in the camper, it was one of those days. So if you're not feeling back to your old self yet, you do one more thing. So you take each item in the what's wrong category and you ask yourself one question. Am I in control of this? So if the answer is yes, you are in control of it, I want you to write down a simple action step that you can take today. So if you're anything like me, then you can be a professional procrastinator. Sometimes we can dwell on something for 5 weeks that we could possibly fix in 5 minutes if we would just make the phone call, do the thing that scares you, just clean up the mess, right? So progress towards a goal has a way of just lifting our spirits in no time flat. Okay, but what if the answer is no? You are not in control of your crazy coworker currently acting like an unruly toddler that needs a nap. I don't have any of those, I'm just saying. But maybe you do. Are you in control of her? I don't think so. So then what? You have to let it go. You have to somehow learn to let it go. So please tell me why you would waste 1 ounce of mental energy on things that you can't change anyway. So it doesn't help, it steals your joy, and it wastes your precious life. So we've got to learn to stop. You know what they say, 90% of the junk that we worry about, it doesn't happen anyway. And we can't control other people, so we gotta learn to let it go. So you guys, I seriously hope that you take the brain dump for a test spin because it really, really does help. All right. Next, I'm going to go health coach on you and talk about the diet and exercise difference. So you wouldn't think that diet and exercise would have anything to do with getting through grief, but they do. I always say that I did the hard work of healing through, prayer and journaling, my circle of support, but I never healed completely until I learned to heal my body. So, when I say diet and exercise difference, now I want you to know, like, diet, it seems like a 4-letter word these days, right? So I don't mean some crazy cockamamie scheme that you come up with to rip 20 pounds off your body before your class reunion or something like that. When I say diet, I simply mean the foods you eat on a regular basis. So I find this kind of interesting. So let's see if you do. So did you know that, well, first of all, let me just say that Americans were obsessed with dieting and weight loss, right? And it's been like this for years. So Elvis Presley reportedly was a fan of the Sleeping Beauty diet, where he was sedated for days at a time. And the thought behind this was, well, okay, a sleeping Elvis can't eat, right? In the 1970s, jaw wiring gained popularity for treating obesity. And then my personal favorite, the tapeworm diet. So seemingly sane individuals would swallow live tapeworms in the hope that those little critters would help them lose weight. As you might imagine, there were some drawbacks: nausea, bloating, diarrhea, and the possibility that they may lay eggs in tissues such as the brain. Can you imagine? I think I'll just stay fluffy. No, I'm good. Not worth it. So when I talk about diet, I just mean foods that you eat on a regular basis. Okay, so the standard American diet, full of empty calories and processed junk, it's become commonplace. And it's really no wonder, it stands to reason that it forms the acronym SAD, right? Standard American Diet, SAD. Because that's kind of how it makes us feel, right? A little little bit sad, fat, a little lethargic, a little melancholy, like, I don't know what's wrong, but nothing really seems right. Like, we just don't feel good. And I know that comfort food and junk food is fun sometimes, but really our bodies deserve better. So it's kind of like when we eat garbage and we expect to feel good. I mean, it's hilarious when you think about it. It's like sending troops into battle, but without armor or ammunition. Or taking your dog sled team out back, running them puppies for 50 miles without a stop for water. Or just forgetting to feed your baby for a few days and expecting a peaceful child. Like, it's not gonna happen. So even in the midst of grief or just a super busy life, our poor bodies can never take a day off. They are still regulating temperature and transporting oxygen and nutrients, getting rid of waste, and 1,000 other things that we aren't even aware of. So they need nutrition to function properly. So please feed your body what it needs. It's easier said than done, I know, but I don't think it's a coincidence that God made the food that grows from the ground and hangs from the trees, and he made our bodies as well too. So it just stands to reason that they function in perfect harmony. All right, on to exercise. Exercise, I believe, is like a secret weapon, especially for us grieving folks. So I figured this out by accident just a few months after losing Trevin. So my mom and my sister had bought little fitness trackers. I think it was called, back in the day, Jawbone Up 24, right? Just a little wrist thing that you would wear. And not wanting to be left out, I purchased one as well. So the technology was new and we were enamored. Like, I love to see when Trace went to bed and when mom got up and how many steps they had. And this little device gave me so many facts and insights about my health that I was just hooked. So looking back, using this fitness tracker with my mom and my sister helped me in a few ways. So first of all, it got me up and moving. I am a goal-oriented person, and so I took my step goals pretty seriously. I found myself walking up to an hour per day, and that got me up off that couch, out into the fresh air and sunshine, and that is a mood booster for anyone, grieving or not. Secondly, it took my mind off the grief, even if it was just for a few minutes. And it also gave me something to strive for and to be a part of. And I think that's so very important. And let me just tell you, the mind and the body respond so quickly to exercise. It's just amazing. My mood and energy, it shot through the roof. And you've heard of endorphins, right? Well, those little feel-good chemicals, like, they are for real. I felt really, really good. And the thing was, like, this was 4, 5, 6 months after losing Trevin. I had no business feeling good. Sometimes I was like, I had my moments, of course, but sometimes I just felt relaxed and peaceful despite what I was going through. Well, I feel like that, once again, was like a little gift from God. He deposited exercise in my life because he knew I needed all the help I can get, and the deck stacked in my favor. But the thing was, sure, he gave me the gift, but it was my job to unwrap the gift and to use it. So after about a month of walking, I set my step goal higher, and I found myself jogging to achieve the step goal before dark. And I'm telling you what, vigorous exercise must have doubled the endorphins coursing through my body, because I felt even better, and it was just crazy. So I have a little bit of trivia here for you. I'm gonna put a picture up on the screen, and I'm going to give you 10 imaginary bonus points that you cannot redeem for anything if you can tell me what's going on in this picture. So it's a screenshot from my phone, I'll tell you that. Should I insert some Jeopardy thanking music here? That would be good, right? Okay, well, I'll tell you. I figured out that my phone was using GPS to track my walks, right? I could go down 252nd, I took a left on Rokeby, and I came back. So I made a weird upside down L, right? And I got to thinking, okay, if I could make an L, what other letters can I make? And so one day I'm in our big front yard and I am jogging with all my might in a serpentine pattern, making an S, cursive S, and then an M and an I. Do you see how it says smile right there? And then because I'm a nerd, I added a heart and a star and I don't know, a little bullseye or something. So I was cracking myself up. I was running and getting my heart rate up, exercising, and actually having a great time. And you know what? I felt really proud of myself because I kind of saw the old Steph coming back. And man, that is worth so much. So hopefully today you are not in survival mode like I was back then, but I still say the mood boosting power of exercise, it works for everybody. Wow, I've done lots of talking. It's been 50 minutes already, my goodness. So this does bring me to the end of my presentation. And I always wonder, how do I wrap it up? What do I leave you with? And what came to mind were just two little words, and actually it's the last chapter, the title of the last chapter of my book. And the two little words are just jump, just jump. So that means that I want you to do something with the information that I gave you tonight. It's perfectly bright outside. You can tell I do this at night. Do something with the dang information, right? So even if it's just the smallest thing that moves you 1% towards living your best life. I think it was an after school special thing on Channel 12 when I was little. It was a saying that knowledge is power, right? Knowledge is power. Okay, well, I don't think that's true either. Sure, it makes for maybe a cool t-shirt or like a window cling or something, but I feel like application of the knowledge, that is where the power is at. So make sure you apply something that you took away from this talk. So here's my final question for you today. What do you need to do? What is it that you need to do, either big or small? I feel like you might have something in mind. So is there something that needs to be cleaned up in your life, cleared out, and reimagined and rebuilt? So, as a Christian, I know the end of my story. It's meeting Jesus and hugging Trevin and rehashing how this crazy life went down. Like, we're going to have some catching up to do. And then we get to live in perfect peace in heaven forever and ever and ever. And that's mind-blowing. But that's the end of my story, and I like it. But you know what? I think that God has some work for me to do down here first. And for that reason, I think God wants me to be the best, most loving, most healed version of myself so that I can rock my life, not only for His glory, but for my enjoyment. And the same is true for you. I wish we could wrap our brains around the fact that tomorrow isn't promised, and man, the clock is ticking. So who do you want to be? Someone once said, visualize your highest self and then start showing up as her. Okay, yeah, cool. So how does a thin, fit, debt-free woman who loves recklessly and gives generously, how does she walk into a room? So how does she speak to others and spend her time? What thoughts does she allow into her mind? And what food and drink does she allow into her body? And most importantly, who is her source of strength and courage and joy? I believe that when you and God agree on the trajectory of your life, there is nothing that can keep you from it. So living your best life will honor the life of your loved one. I believe it rings the bells of heaven, and you'll have a really great time along the way. And man, that is my wish for you. Thank you so much. If you actually made it all the way, 54 minutes and 24 seconds, thank you for hanging in there with me. I wanted to put a bow on my 2 years of my Grief Done Differently talks. And so thank you for helping me do that. Have a great day.